we in full production mode? Because I'm about to start the show.
Yeah, we don't have a full production mode, so we're good.
Okay. We're back from Fort Wayne. You're back here with us on the D3 Datacast. We are down to just one game left to play here in this Division III basketball season. I love Fort Wayne weekend, Matt. It's the last time in Fort Wayne. Next time, next year we're going to Pittsburgh for a couple years. But I hope that you're rested. You got home safely, obviously. I know I came home and I took a nap on the couch for a couple hours. So how you doing? Are you rested, recovered, ready to do this show, recapping Fort Wayne weekend?
It was really fun. It was great to get 8 teams there, 4 games the first day, 2 games the second day, double the action, plus an all-star game in there. It's amazing how tiring it can be sitting in an arena watching 4 games in a row, but that was like 13 hours for us at the gym. It was really, really fun. Really glad that we got to have this special schedule this year that allowed us to have kind of the Elite Eight Final Four weekend in Fort Wayne here, and then we'll be able to look forward now to a championship game coming out of this weekend.
Yeah, it was a great weekend, and it really felt like we had 8 Final Four teams there. So it was very much an Elite Eight befitting the stage that it was given. Fun to see, and it was great that all 8 teams really felt like got the full Final Four experience. Right, as we were there experiencing the quarterfinals, it felt very much like we had experienced for Final Four. So very cool that 8 programs got to experience that. So let's jump into those games that we saw on Thursday. Of course, for those of you who've been following our YouTube channel, we had our quick reactions from courtside. But now that we've, had some time to digest it all, want to go through those recaps again, starting with that first game, that first quarterfinal between Christopher Newport and St. Thomas. It was Christopher Newport getting a 63-59 win. And games are sometimes described as rock fights, and this one certainly fits that description, especially the first half. That was just a 22-22 game going into halftime. Christopher Newport was able to create some separation, turning what was at the time a 39-36 game into a 50-38 game with just over 7 minutes to remaining, with Ethan Ward and Toa Hollenbeck scoring all 11 captain's points over that stretch. But Angel Johnson got a bucket to make it a 1-point game with just 43 seconds remaining, but it was the Celts' final points of the day, with Christopher Newport shooting free throws to secure the final margin. CNU forward Ethan Ward talked about the battle in the paint. This was a real battle all day between the bigs in a win or go home scenario in the post game. Here's that comment from Ethan.
See ball, get ball, grab ball. You just gotta be aggressive, especially in the tournament. Everybody, like every big, is not trying to go home or trying to be like, oh, if I got one more rebound. So everybody's going for the ball, everybody's going for steals, everybody's going for tough makes. So you just gotta be strong, and mentality's just going there. And I played big in front of them.
The 46-34 rebounding advantage that Christopher Newport enjoyed was big in helping to level out what could have been an advantage for St. Thomas, who was +7 in terms of turnovers, but just a little more rebounding on one end, a few more turnovers on the other. Really, the shooting numbers came out near identical. Christopher Newport was 21 of 58. St. Thomas was 21 of 59. But the big difference was that 3 of those 3 additional makes for Christopher Newport were behind the 3-point line. So even the number of attempts and number of makes were the same. It's just, squeezing out 3 extra points with a couple of those shots being from long distance instead of being just 2-point field goals. The run came to an end for St. Thomas there. But it was another step forward for a program that's still a relative newcomer to Division III following their transition from NAIA. That's something that head coach Anthony Medina talked about after the game. Here are his comments there in the post-game press conference.
Very, very proud. I couldn't be more proud of the guys. Couldn't be more proud of our coaching staff. For us moving into Division III, it's been like moving in uncharted territory every step of the way. Right, like you move into conference play, you move into our first national tournament. This is 4 in a row now, so we're just continuing to gain experience, get a feel for what the environment is like, what the opponents are going to be like. We've done the best we can to expose ourselves to as much as possible early in the year, but when you get to this point in the season, there's really not anything you can do to prepare the specific groups for that. As we look backwards on this season, I think that everybody has something to be proud of. It's like I told the guys in the locker room. You have 2 choices. You can recognize that there's a big season that just happened, right? There was 31 games, or you can hang your hat on the one loss that you had at the end. Most people will focus on those last 40 minutes, but if you're smart, you'll recognize that you had a lot of accomplishments you should be very proud of.
Yeah, Zach, it's really interesting with how successful that the St. Thomas program has been coming into Division III, now in the Elite Eight here. I'm always surprised when I go back and remember just how recent it was that they made their full transition into Division III. It now feels like they've just always been here because they've been in that top 25 mix and now in the national conversation mix here, Elite Eight weekend in Fort Wayne. But they haven't really been here all that long. So really great stuff that they've been able to put forward as a program. I know they're probably disappointed that they couldn't go on to the Final Four here, but they were, just a couple of makes away from advancing. So really good showing this season and on the weekend for St. Thomas here. All right, Zach, our next game of the weekend did feature a little bit more offense than the first. It was a big contrast, and it began with an offensive flurry. This was Emory 83, Illinois Wesleyan 78 as a final score. But at the first media timeout in this game, both teams were shooting above 50%. As I said, big contrast to the one we had seen just previously. And three-point shooting in particular remained a key for both sides in this one up at halftime, where Emory was 7 of 10 and Illinois Wesleyan was 5 of 9 from deep. That was a 47-43 halftime lead for Emory. I think that little bit of a difference in three-point shooting, although both were great, definitely made the difference for Emory there. I also think in the first half, in particular, Mario Awasam was really great defensively for Emory. He blocked a pair of shots, and I think he was a key reason why it took Illinois Wesleyan a little while to get Noah Cleveland going. Cleveland had 6 points in the first half there. He's used to maybe a few more than that. Sitting courtside then in the second half, it really felt like the Titans kind of hit a danger zone when they fell behind by about 10 points with 6 minutes left. But right from there, and this was something we saw a lot of teams do when they got down big, is kind of respond right away with a run. It was a 12-2 run for Illinois Wesleyan to go from the 6 minutes to about 2:30, and they tied the game there. Illinois Wesleyan actually did never lead in this game, but they had the score tied 3 separate times from that 2:30 mark until the end. But really every time it was Emory that came up with a big response, including that final dagger of a 3-point shot that Ben Pierce hit with only 1 or 2 seconds left on the clock. That broke the tie for good. Illinois Wesleyan just had like a full court inbound pass that just kind of went clear out of bounds. So Emory had to inbound the ball again, got fouled. 2 more free throws sealed the 83-78 win. But that was a really big shot for Ben Pierce, and he talked about what he was seeing in that on that final play as we went into the post-game press conference.
Yeah, first I thought I was letting the guys down the stretch, but I was just trying to stay with it and really, keep my confidence. I know that the next one is going to fall. They made the 2 free throws. We came down. We knew we were going with the ball screen. He kind of played me over the top on the first one, and we always talk about being able to rescreen if they play over the top on the first one. And I thought the big was back a little bit on the drop coverage, and so I thought I had the shot, and it felt good coming out of my hand.
All right, Zach, while we were in that highlight, my camera absolutely died, so we're on alternate cam now as we go, so sorry for the change up here. But here's head coach Ron Rose talking about the tough combination that Emory presented with their speed and athleticism while they're also hitting outside shots.
Pretty obvious, wasn't it? Those guys are athletic. They got speed to burn. And our whole goal was to slow them down. And it's hard because they get that ball and they get going downhill. And we tried not as successful the first half as the second. As much as you talk about it until you're out there and experience it and really feel what it takes to try to put the brakes and slow them down a little bit. And they, to their credit, they come at you for 40 minutes. And, we've been a really good defensive team all year. I thought our defense showed up the second half a little bit more as we adjusted to some of that speed, but certainly it's a combination of the speed, but then when they shoot it the way they did the first half, you're trying to take something away. It's tough to take it all away. It's impossible sometimes, so you kind of pick and choose, and they were 7 for 10 in the first half. That makes it really difficult when they can spread the floor like that as well.
Zach, for Emory, Jair Knight had a terrific 23-point game, including 3 3-pointers. Ben Pierce had 21 points with 4 3-pointers. We just saw one of those was that dagger 3-pointer at the end. A.J. Harris had a tough 14 points, perfect 2 for 2 from deep. Mario Awasam had 13 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 blocked shots. Zach, for Illinois Wesleyan, Mason Funk had a really, really great day. He led all scorers in this game with 36 points. There was an Emory fan sitting just a little bit behind us at the media, or we were at the media table. He was sitting behind us. And every time Mason Funk touched the ball with even an inch of space, all we could hear was, "Not him, anyone but him. Don't leave Funk open." So the Emory fans definitely recognized the great game that Mason Funk had. Noah Cleveland ended up with 17 points and 8 rebounds. And senior Carlo Kolak finished with 9 points and 11 rebounds. Really great game for them. Both of these teams had so many strengths. It forces the opponents to pick and choose how they're going to defend. Emory had that great terrific shooting night that they responded with. And Ron Rose during the press conference pointed out that so many of Mason Funk's opportunities were because Emory was trying to take away other things that Mason was able to get loose for that career-high 36-point game. Really great to see these two teams playing at such a high level. Really fortunate to see this game in Fort Wayne. It was the type of game that really did feel like a Final Four game, so great to see that we saw it in that big atmosphere there.
Yeah, just high-level performances by both teams, even with each side trying to take something away or slow down, what one side wants to do. But then, to have Emory come out with the kind of outside shooting they had, just say, hey, if you're going to take this away, we're going to do this. And same thing with on the Illinois Wesleyan side with, some of their shooters having a hard time to get going. And so often Mason Funk was able to kind of get into the middle, kind of the paint, free throw line area and do some damage, whether that be with that mid-range jumper or, him kind of taking the pass there and getting to the hoop. Just so many guys stepping up to play a big time game in a big time, tournament spot there in the Elite Eight. And that's why it really did feel like a Final Four championship level game. All right, moving on, Matt. After, there was supposed to be a bit of a break or a dinner break in there, but the way that things were going, it was kind of a slow progressing day. And so, games really were kind of stacked on top of each other. Third up was Trinity, Connecticut taking on Tufts. It was a 69-66 win for the Bantams, but it was the Jumbos who got out to a fast start, paced by Joshua Bernstein with an early 4 points and 2 boards as part of an early 9-2 Tufts lead. It would be a drought for over 5 minutes, though, for Tufts from there until a Scott Gemesi layup tied the game at 11. And then Tufts endured another drought of over 5 minutes as they were stuck on 20 points from the 7:43 mark until 2:08 to play in the first half. But fortunately for Tufts, Trinity was hardly lighting it up themselves as this one went into the half, a 29-27 game in the Bantams' favor. Not quite the 22-22 game we saw in the first one, but neither team here reaching 30 points in the first half. In the second half, Trinity, Connecticut started to gain some separation, maxing out with a Drew Lazard layup to make it 53-44 or 41, a 12-point lead there for the Bantams. But Tufts wouldn't go away. A Bernstein bucket made it just a 2-point game at 65-63 down the stretch. But Jared Berry had a huge game overall with 14 points and 5 rebounds in just 16 minutes of action. But he was big in big moments down the stretch with an offensive rebound and layup to once again make it a 2-possession game after Tufts had made it a 2-point game. And then he hit a pair of free throws to help seal the game. Joshua Bernstein was terrific, Matt, and you had some great comments in the post game talking about the dynamic of playing a familiar opponent, navigating some of the challenges that were necessitated by Scott Gemesi's injury. He missed the opening weekend of the tournament, returned in the Sweet 16, but came off the bench as he did in that quarterfinal game, not able to play the kind of minutes that he is used to playing, and just the way that Tufts was able to battle back when down. Here's Josh in that post-game press conference.
We've seen Trinity throughout our 4 years a ton, and we know their actions pretty well. I think that's always beneficial. I think, switching up matchups, obviously having Scotty out, the last time we played him and this time sort of forced us to switch up some matchups, and that helped in some areas, hurt in other areas. And so I think the main focus for this game was just trying to be as aggressive as we could be. And, I'm proud of, the effort we had there, especially at the end. Every time it looked like it was pulling away, we were able to, out effort, out hustle, and keep it close. And so we really gave ourselves a great shot. And so, I'm really proud of that for all of us.
Now, Matt, we've talked about how this was a game between familiar opponents, but it was in a venue that was only familiar to the Bantams. This kind of situation, this deep into the tournament. Of course, Trinity, Connecticut making their third straight trip to Fort Wayne. Henry Vetter actually was asked about that, and he talked about that being an advantage in their post-game press conference. Here's Henry.
I think definitely. I mean, honestly, just even shooting during practice and shoot around, like just being used to the gym already, I think that's a big advantage. And obviously, just knowing kind of the routines and stuff, getting in and out of here, and I think that definitely served us well. And obviously, we've earned that advantage just by winning.
Yeah, Zach, I've never had an opportunity to see a NESCAC game out in the Northeast. We've now seen two, though, in Fort Wayne with Trinity Wesleyan last year and now Trinity Tufts this year. But you get a sense of kind of the battles that these teams have back and forth. Usually always great defensive teams, but teams that can score the ball as well. I think we kind of saw that, one team gets down, comes back kind of perspective that happens all the time in these NESCAC type games. That's kind of a bucket list thing. I would love to get out to the Northeast for one, but kind of fortunate to be able to see two really good ones in Fort Wayne so far.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Zach, our final game of the day, I think we're at their fourth and final game of the day now. Mary Washington 81, Chicago 73 was the final of this one. But really the first couple of minutes, Chicago came out of the gate ready to play. I think the first shot of the game, was a 6'7" forward, Daniel Cochran, knocking down a three-pointer for Chicago. Then a little bit later, Shane Regan had an offensive rebound, got fouled, made a couple free throws. Then Nick Roper of Chicago got an offensive rebound, got fouled, and made a free throw. It was only a 6-2 lead early for Chicago, but it kind of seemed like their size was going to go and give Mary Washington trouble. Mary Washington is a great team, but they're not a big team. So the way it just kind of looks when it starts the game is like maybe they're not big enough in this one. And Chicago would go on to grab 9 offensive rebounds in that first half, but they were only able to convert those into 7 second chance points. So 9 offensive rebounds, 7 second chance points. Fortunately, though, Mary Washington really started shooting the lights out there in that first half. 63% overall, 60% from deep. And it was the Eagles that actually went to the locker room with a big 49-35 lead. Chicago, though, was able to make a big run. I think there was a 22-8 run. It kind of spanned halftime there. That kind of was capped off by a Nick Roper dunk. Still 16 minutes to play. And I think this kind of, brought Chicago even, but Mary Washington was able to keep them at arm's length the rest of the way. Mary Washington's hot shooting did cool down in that second half, but they really still, for the game overall, shot the ball well. It wasn't particularly an efficient night for star Kai Robinson. He had 12 points, but they had plenty of options and weapons for their scoring elsewise. I thought Jay Randall in particular was really good for Mary Washington in this game. He was great. He had 22 points. Chubb Young also knocked in 13 points. Jaden Burgess had 11. But one of the stories was Mary Washington as a team being a perfect 15 of 15 from the free throw line. In a close game like this, that was tight down the stretch, being able to salt the game away at the free throw line, knocking them in every single time, I think that was just really, really big, especially from a young team. They didn't blink at the pressure. But credit to Chicago, right? In that halftime deficit, they were down. They did make a comeback. They were able to make that run in the second half. They had some experience being in that position in the Sweet 16. And Eamon Kenna talked about that in the press conference after the game for Chicago.
The conversation was we've been here before. We were in that exact spot the last round. Mid-teen deficit. And we know what we're capable of. We understand that's a game of runs. We understand that if we make the right plays, then we'll put ourselves back in the position to win that game. And we came out and we felt like we did that. But like I said, it's a game of runs. All the credit to them. They made tough shots. They made great plays. We didn't come out on top, but at the end of the day, we left it all out there. So.
Zach, also with the win, Mary Washington head coach Marcus Kahn became the third coach in Division III to take 2 different programs to the Division III Final Four, and he was asked to reflect upon that in that press conference after the game as well.
It's very humbling. Yeah, this is my favorite part of what I do. Meeting coaching is working with a group of young guys that we can share a vision and work to reach a goal. I'm very, very lucky. I think that's what I take from it. That I'm just a lucky coach to be able to work with coaching staffs that I've had, both for bringing in here and players that I've had both for bringing in here. Two completely different dynamics from players, two completely different dynamics from coaching staffs. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, quite a game. It looked like one that could get out of hand for one side early, then kind of did get out of hand for the other side later on, but did turn into a great game. And Matt, you talked about that 15 for 15 night at the line for Mary Washington. That's great in any regard, but as you reflect on the weekend, there were a lot of performances from the free throw line overall that just were not very good. And I
That's
don't
right.
know if you can chalk that up to, being in the bigger venue, something like that. But that's something we definitely noticed throughout the weekend, is that there were a lot of teams that really struggled from the line. So that, it seems like that 15 for 15 performance stands out even more than it might have otherwise. All right, let's move on to Saturday with our semifinals, starting off with Emory getting a 72-58 win over Christopher Newport. And Matt, it really felt like there were two versions of this game as it played out. There was the one with Mario Awasum on the floor and the one with him on the bench. He first went to the bench with Emory up 12-5, and then he returned at 12-10 before having to sit back down with a second foul just a couple minutes later with the game tied at 15. With him out for much of that first half, Ethan Faust was left out there to battle for rebounds, which he did all night with a game high 14. But it was a tough go for Emory, as CNU was really tough on the glass without Awasum out there, kind of giving Emory a little bit more rebounding prowess, a little bit more length, to make those rebounds a little bit more difficult for Christopher Newport. Christopher Newport used a spurt with under 5 minutes to play in the first half to go up by as many as 9. And that was capped by a Zaire Baskerville 3 with 3:17 to go. But that was the captain's final points of the half. And Emory was able to cut the deficit to just 3 going into halftime. That's something that Christopher Newport head coach John Krikorian talked about, that critical juncture there at the end of the first half being a turning point. He talked about the difference of, maybe if they were able to go up, closer to double digits as opposed to having that cut down by 3. But, you can hear that in his words here.
Yeah, I think we were playing CNU basketball. We know these guys. I mean, our guys are tough. They get through screens. We really wanted to, even though they're a great three-point shooting team, for us it was about, they started by getting in the paint. So really just protecting the basket. And I thought our guys did a tremendous job. I mean, 32 points for those guys in a half. We've got about as low as it's going to be. Unfortunately, there was a little momentum turn at the end of the first half, where I thought if we could have kept it at 8 or 9 or 10, it would have been a big difference. But, it didn't happen, and so we had to go in there and try to do it again. We had some guys like Collins, legs got banged up. I think Dozier's groin. Jason Ovkosik probably broke his nose. So, things got physical. We had some guys at some different rotations. But that's all part of it.
So Christopher Newport had a little bit of a drought going into halftime, and that extended into the second half until Tyson Henderson's bucket about 3.5 minutes in to tie things up at 37-37. Christopher Newport was able to regain a lead at 39-37, but that would be their last lead of the game, as Emory went on an 8-0 run to gain a lead they would never give up. But, it was still very much a game that was in doubt. It was just a 3-point game with 10:30 to play, but Emory extended things from there, ultimately going up by as many as 17 with under 2 minutes to play. Before both teams were able to kind of clear the bench, get some other guys a little bit of Final Four experience to see the floor there, with Emory closing out the win to move on to the championship game, which they will have to wait 2 weeks to play. That's something that Jason Zimmerman was asked about, and he talked about how that could lead to being either over-prepared or under-prepared. Here's Jason's comments after the game on waiting for that championship game in Indy.
Somebody asked me, well, man, what if you win 2 games in Fort Wayne and you got to wait 2 weeks? I said, dude, they could tell me I'm playing in July. I couldn't care less. Let's play. We're playing in 1 game. Yeah, I mean, Woody as a staff have already kind of like mapped out our schedule, and I kind of looked at it last night, and I'm going to change it. But yeah, we'll be ready. Like, the team we play has got to do the same thing too. So it's not like we have to wait 2 weeks and they wait 4 days. So we'll be ready. We'll be ready. We're going to come back to Indiana.
How do you keep from over preparing with 2 weeks?
Yeah, we're not going to over prepare.
Yeah,
we're not going to over prepare. Like we do what we do. These guys are really good. Like, we're not going to over prepare. Like, we'll prepare, and we'll prepare. We'll probably take longer to prepare for sure. But I just trust these dudes, and we're going to be ready. And if we lose, it's not going to be because we over-prepared or we under-prepared. These guys are going to be ready to go. And, we got 10 rounds to see if we can be national champs, right? And, we had a call yesterday morning, 9 o'clock. I didn't know what the call was for. I thought it was going to be about for today. And all of a sudden, they're talking to 4 teams about the final game. These guys don't even know this. But so 9 o'clock yesterday morning, they're talking about the final game. I went back to the room. My wife was there. I went back to the room and said, oh shit, like, this is really cool if we're going to do this. We have to win this game. Right? It put more pressure on me. I didn't tell these guys, right? I said, this is really special to be able to do this, and the NCAA allowing this to happen, the joint championship. To be able to do that for these guys, they don't even know what's coming, right? They have no, I've been going to the Final Four since like 1996, something like that. Now, I haven't gone a lot recently because my kids are in sports in the spring, so I don't go. I go watch volleyball or baseball. But to go back like this is pretty special. And my 2 kids have already said they're flying in, so I guess I'm paying for flying.
Yeah, Zach, just from being around the Emory team, they seem like they're locked in. I wouldn't be surprised if they're ready to go after those 2 weeks, that the longer layoff is not really going to affect them too much. I mean, it's an adjustment, right? Teams aren't used to going that long without playing this time of year, but I think that they'll be able to handle that pretty well. And I did just want to shout out Zaire Baskerville for Christopher Newport. I think he had a great weekend. He's one of those guys that when you get to see in person, they really pop compared to just watching them on web streams. That's what I really love about being able to go to these games, whether it's big tournaments like Great Lakes Invitational or like Final Four weekend. He's a tough matchup for everyone. He can score inside and outside. He can be a problem. So he was just one of the players that came away from the weekend just enjoying being able to see in person. So definitely shouts to Zaire Baskerville. They came up short in this game, but he really impressed me a lot for what he could do with Christopher Newport. And Zach, so our final game of the weekend was Mary Washington. They came away as 64-61 winners. This was our 6th and final game of the weekend. Defending national champion Trinity's 3rd Final Four game in as many years, right? They've been here. They looked like the defending champs. They made things really tough on Mary Washington in the first half. Mary Washington shot just 29% from the floor in the first half. And that's even from a really good half from Jaden Burgess, who went 4 for 5, made some really big shots, kind of kept them in the game, even though they were down 11. Trinity had a balanced scoring attack, though, in the first half. Jarrell Okarago had 9 points. Henry Vetter knocked down a pair of threes. Trinity went into that locker room with that 37-26 11-point lead. They looked like the veteran mature team playing up against a bunch of like sophomores and juniors, which the game was. But so much credit to Mary Washington. That 11-point lead at halftime was down from a 16-point peak just a few minutes before. And maybe it was that small run to end that first half that gave Mary Washington some life, because they came out in the second half on fire. They held Trinity to just, I think, 4 points in the first maybe 8.5 minutes of that second half. And they really tied that game up at 41-41 with 11:30 to go. And at that point, it was just kind of a little bit of back and forth. Jared Berry for Trinity was able to make a layup to extend the lead back to 7. And then you kind of think, okay, here again is when Trinity's going to become inevitable. But Mary Washington just wouldn't go away. They chipped away, and then finally flipped the game for good. Kai Robinson kind of jump stop at the elbow, looking around, finds Caden Bates open for a 3-point shot in the corner with 24 seconds left. Bates hit that 3-pointer to give Mary Washington the lead for good. They hit one additional free throw to win 64-61. And Zach, it's funny, Kai Robinson was asked in the press conference about finding Caden Bates open for the 3. And he reminded us all, like, they had kind of run that same action like a minute before, and Bates was open, and Bates just like rimmed out, missed it. So he said, I knew if I could find him again, he wasn't going to miss. And he found him again. And then, Bates was asked about it too. And he said kind of similar. He's like, I know I can make that shot. I had confidence. My teammates have confidence from me. He got it again and he knocked it down. Just what a big shot. What a big weekend. I think we've said a few times recently and on the season as a whole, Mary Washington just plays a mature style, even though they're such a young team. They're great to watch. They don't let pressure get to them when they get down, whether it's big or whether they give the lead back up. They keep coming at you, and they're able to make big shots. And we saw it again here today, knocking off the defending champs. Really entertaining game, especially down the stretch when Mary Washington was able to kind of tie it up and make it a game. But really, really amazing things that these Mary Washington Eagles have been able to do with kind of such a young program and kind of fulfill the destiny that we saw in them last year when they made kind of that early run to the Sweet 16.
You mentioned those two 3-point attempts by Caden Bates. Those were the only two of his on the day, right? So there's the one that he missed, and then the other one that he said, if come back to me, I'm going to make that same shot the next time, which he did. Big time stuff there for sure. It did kind of late. They would close it down and seemed like it would run back up to like a 6 or 7 point game. They'd close it down and then run back up. It's just that they were able to close that down that final time, make that one shot to get the lead, and time was over at that time, basically. Trinity did have one more shot at it, but it's kind of like they made that run at just the right time with no time left on the clock, basically. Big time stuff. So that sets up our championship game on Sunday, April 5th, between Emory and Mary Washington. So as we've done for previous rounds, let's take a look at kind of this matchup as viewed in the D3 Datacast efficiency ratings. This is the computer's number 3 overall team in Mary Washington and the number 5 overall team in Emory, right? That makes Mary Washington a computer favorite in this one. But Matt, look at where these teams rank in terms of their adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency. Emory, the number 8 offense in the computer ratings, number 15 defense. Mary Washington, the number 4 offense, the number 9 defense. So, top 5 teams and both of them top 15 teams, whether you want to break it down just in terms of what they're able to do offensively or defensively.
Yeah, no surprise when you get to the championship game between two teams that have been like in the top 5 basically down the stretch or most of the year, and they're great at everything, right? Both sides of the ball, they're top 10. Defensively, they're both top 15. And even though there's a 3-point advantage here by our computer for Mary Washington, that's like a 60-40 game, which is basically a 50-50 game. So it's like a coin flip for the national championship, more or less. And that's kind of what you want to see. A really, really great game right here. Interesting, though, our computer favors Mary Washington by a little bit. NPI, I think Emory was the one just ahead, if I have that correctly off the top of my head. So, yeah, two teams that have done it. They were both kind of the number 1 seeds in their quadrant. They got to the championship game here. It's going to be a fantastic one, I think, for all of us to watch.
And this is what you want. You talk about there's no real like strength on strength matchup or contrasting styles where you might have one that's like a really good offensive team, one that's a really good defensive team, or teams that are maybe both really good offensively and kind of so-so defensively, right? The way that the computer rates these teams on both ends of the court is really, really good. And that's what you want to see when you're playing for a championship, 2 games that do just about everything really, really well. The only real difference in the way that these teams look, and it's not necessarily an aspect of quality, but is just in kind of the tempos that they typically play, where Emory is a top 50 team and Mary Washington is ranked number 325 in terms of tempo.
Yeah, we've seen Emory really be willing to push the pace, get a rebound and push it up the floor, or even on a made basket, just push it up the floor. Other teams aren't as willing to do that. I think Mary Washington has the players to keep up with that kind of a style, but it's not necessarily what they do naturally themselves. But we've seen them play kind of faster tempo teams and get the advantage there. So I don't think it'll be too much of a shock for either team how the other side wants to play necessarily.
Right. And we heard that similar sentiment from John Krikorian when Christopher Newport was going up against Emory, right? So Emory does play that faster style, and he talked about his guys. It's not that they can't; they're going to be perfectly willing to be able to go out there and maybe run a little bit more. So, I don't think that the pace is going to be anything that Mary Washington necessarily uncomfortable with, or something that they're going to be forced into be doing reluctantly. I think it's just going to be a little bit more of an up and down game than it might be against another opponent. So adds just a little bit of extra intrigue and excitement to what should be a really good matchup, should be a really good game. All right. Anything else here before we get into the picks? Let's just go on to the picks, Matt.
Let's go on to the picks. So we had some guest pickers with us. We had KJ and Ruda picking the games. But here's how we did. We're not going to grade them. We're just going to grade ourselves here as usual.
Here's my grade. They did great.
They did awesome. They were better than us.
They were great.
Everyone loves them. They're cool. We'll have them on again sometime in the future, hopefully. Christopher Newport, St. Thomas was the first game. This was a 1-point line in favor of St. Thomas, and we both picked St. Thomas, but they did not cover. Christopher Newport beats the computers once again. We both missed that point, Zach. Illinois Wesleyan and Emory in the second game. That was a push. That was a 5-point computer line. 2 free throws at the end. Push this into Emory's favor. Otherwise, we both would have covered this one. This was a 3-point game until 1 second left. But we pushed that one, so neither of us get that. Tufts and Trinity was a 7.5-point line. Trinity did win, but by 3. So we both picked Tufts, and we both got that point. Chicago and Mary Washington. This was a 2.5 line in favor of Mary Washington. They won by 8. So, Zach, you got that pick, and you had a better week than I did. Once again, you were 2-1-1. Overall, 53, 45, and 4. I was 1-2-1. I've been giving up points like crazy. I'm now 56, 42, and 3. Just a 3-point lead going into the final game. So let's see if we can make enough picks to give you a shot at overcoming this 3-point lead. What do you say?
Yeah, like Mary Washington against Trinity. I'm trying to take the lead right, kind of right as time is about to expire.
Yeah. All right, Zach. So here's what we came up with picks. We were going over this before the show. We're gonna have 4 picks here. Plus, we're gonna call the 5th. We kind of called our shot. KJ had a great idea during last week's episode. Let's pick our national champions. I selected Emory. Zach, you selected Mary Washington. They were the 2 teams that advanced. So we're going to do a little bit of Datacast celebrating Datacast right here and say that we both picked some correct teams, but we both have teams alive. So we're going to count that as a point as well, depending on who straight up wins the national championship. So that one's in the hole already. So here's our 4 picks. Our actual computer line on this one is Mary Washington by 3 against Emory. Zach, how do you see that?
As you already mentioned, I already have Mary Washington picked as my national champion. So to go against them with this point spread here, what I would really need is for Mary Washington to win, but only by a point or 2. That is trying to thread the needle a little bit too much. So give me Mary Washington laying the 3 points for a big Mary Washington Eagles win, not an Emory Eagles win.
Okay. And I guess I didn't gamify this enough because I picked Emory in the call my shot. I'm going to pick Emory against the line here because if they're 3-point underdogs and I think they're going to win, I think they're going to cover that. I could have just picked Mary Washington and kind of tried to cover my bases on both sides here. But I didn't do that. We're going to give you a shot here. So I'm going to go with Emory. I think that I picked them to win before I knew what the teams were, but I think I can pick them maybe to cover this spread here. Zach, next one is our computer's prediction on what the total number of points scored in this game is going to be. Our computer says 157.5, so that's a little less than maybe 80 per team. How do you see this point total going in this game?
My initial reaction was to take the under here. If the arena in Fort Wayne was a tough shooting atmosphere, a bigger venue, that gets even bigger in Indianapolis when they play at the home of the Indiana Pacers. Gainbridge Fieldhouse, I believe, is what they call it these days. And just, the big moment, the big stage. But then I thought about it, Matt. These are 2 teams that they didn't really seem to get bothered by the stage or feel the pressure. And so I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go with the over here, over 157.5.
Yeah, my initial reaction was to go way under like you. And then I decided, no, I'm going to go way over because we've seen Emory score points. But then there's just something about the atmosphere, the environment, 2 really good teams, defense is going to try to figure each other out. I decided I'm going to pick the under. I think, whatever this is, like 78 would be this predicted score. I think we're going to be just under that. I definitely see both teams hitting the 70s, but I'm going to say we're going to go just under that total. All right, now we're going to do team totals. And we have Mary Washington at under or over 80 points for this game.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of locked myself into the over here by picking the over 157.5. and then also picking Mary Washington to win. So give me Mary Washington over 80.
All right, Zach, and I went with the under, so I'm going to go with the under. So I think under 80. I think both teams finish below 80. Well, maybe I'm spoiling my next pick a little bit, but I'm going to say at least Mary Washington goes under 80. All right, our Emory total is 77. That was the 3-point line there. So Emory over under 77 points. Your pick.
Let's see. Emory was held under 77 against Christopher Newport, but besides that, it had been a while going back to their February 13th game against Brandeis that they were under 77. I could see this game being in the 80s both ways. So again, going with the over, give me Emory over 77.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to go over as well. It's maybe a little bit of a hedge, but it's also, I think they're going to win the game, and I do think it's going to be higher scoring enough. So I would push at 77, but maybe 78, 79. Maybe they touch 80. That's kind of how I'm going to go. So I'll say Emory over. And Zach, you have 3 different picks. It's going to be
4 with the champion.
With the championship. So you have to kind of go 4-1. That's and hope. Well, if you go 4-1, we're opposite on all but one. So, you could thread that needle, maybe pull even, maybe.
I think the path is there, right?
Maybe you just pass
that's
me?
That's all I needed was for the final pick slate here to have a path to a victory.
If I lose this will be a historic. How much was I up on January 1st? I feel like I was up by 20 games already.
I don't know if it was that much. We'd have to go back to the archives.
Have to go back and look. We're not going to go back and look. All right, Zach.
Oh, wait, hold on. If I win, I'm for sure going back to look.
Well, yeah, you will. Yeah.
All right, so that's it. Good job, team. Thank you to all our supporters out there on Patreon at patreon.com/D3 Datacast. They help, support what we do with the website at d3datacast.com. All the information there help get us to Fort Wayne to see these great teams in person. Get the great clips we were able to use in this show here.
Yeah, and I was trying to count while you were talking. We saw several of these people in Fort Wayne, so nice to be able to interact with people that love our show, that watch our show, that we've interacted with online as well. But it's fun when the Final Four weekend also kind of becomes just like a Division III weekend as well. Whether or not people have a team directly involved or not, I think to some degree is immaterial, right? We just love talking about Division III basketball. It's all fun to get together. So it's fun to see kind of championship weekend, even though we still have one game to go. But thanks for everyone who's joined us all year long. If you'd like to finish the year with joining us on Patreon, that's great too. Patreon.com/D3Datacast. $5 a month, $3 a month tier. That'd be awesome as well. Zach, we've got a championship game. Got a few days to fill before we get there, but we're excited to see it. For now, we're going to say, good job, team.